Having a smoker is a classic part of being Australian. I'm not judging. If you're a tradie or you're in hospo, it can get you through the shifts. As of 2023, about 10% of Aussies were smoking, about 24% were ex-smokers, and around 64% of us have never had a cigarette in our entire lives. It's expensive and unhealthy though. It cost us about $137 billion in 2022 to 2023. It would make sense that the government, for no other reason, would simply want to get the economic costs down. And to do that, Australia does what it did best. We taxed it, and then we taxed it again, and then we taxed it some more just to make sure we squeezed it for all it was worth. And at first, this worked. The number of smokers went down, and the taxable revenue went up. But then the number of smokers plateaued, but the tax revenue kept going down. We found out people were still lighting up, but tobacconists started lighting up too. And at first slowly, but then seemingly all at once, this tobacco tax excise had accidentally created an underground, violent black market that the government now has no ability to control. Let me take you back in time. Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister, and anti-smoking groups were holding his feet to the fire because tobacco-related diseases were costing the country $35 billion. In response, we got $19.5 million in funding for cancer research, and the tobacco tax we now know and love started to take shape. Earlier that year, Labor had raised the tobacco excise by 25%. Previously, the last tobacco excise was only 10%, and that was back in 1995. Due to the public pressure, Rudd took things even a step further, and from December 1st that year, there was also going to be an additional 12.5% excise increase each year for 4 years. In theory, it was meant to collect $5.5 billion in revenue and lowering the number of Australians who were smoking to 5% of the population. And at the time, this worked. People started smoking less, and the amount we were generating from revenue was roughly in line with the forecasts. In 2016, the Australian government again increased the tobacco excise by 12.5% each year for 3 years. In 2022, the government again increased the excise by an additional 5% per year for 3 years. All in all, successive governments across the political landscape increased the tobacco excise by 282% from 2013. What all of this practically meant is the cost of smokes got higher and higher, and as of 2024, a single cigarette was worth about $1.48, with $1.37 of that cigarette being tax. On top of the tax, we also phased out advertising on radio and TV. You couldn't have tobacco sponsorships, and we also put in some more regulations when it came to billboards and electronic signs. We also did some major work when it came to the packaging of cigarettes, which Australia has been quite well known for. Quick side note, did you know the family of the man on the cigarette pack was charged with attempted murder? Apparently, the guy on the pack was allegedly meeting another dude secretly from an online dating site. The more you know. Over time, we started to see this interesting trend where the number of smokers plateaued, but the revenue we were meant to be collecting slowly went out of line with the budget. And I'm not talking about a couple million, or even a couple $100 million. The peak tax revenue collected in 2019 was $16 billion. In 2022, it dropped 39% to $9.8 billion. Reasonably, people started to ask, where did the money go? And what it seems Australia had found out a little bit too late is that if you tax an incredibly addictive and lucrative substance to the point where the average person no longer wants to pay for it, they don't just stop buying it. They find an underground illegal black market that is technically about as violent and more profitable than heroin. A black market pack of ciggies is going to cost you roughly $15. It is as simple as walking into a business, asking if they've got any under-the-counter stuff, and you're good to go. Customers don't care because they're getting 3 black market packs for the cost of 1 legal pack, and the businesses are happy because they're making money hand over fist. $250,000 worth of smuggled tobacco can sell anywhere on the street for $7 to $13 million. And on top of that, the punishment for being caught with tobacco is infinitely lighter than any other forms of illicit substances. It's estimated the size of the tobacco market was 9,392 tons in 2022 to 2023, and that's actually down from years prior. But within this tobacco economy, the legal market is shrinking and the illegal market is actually growing, making up 18% of all tobacco sold in 2022 to 2023. In financial terms, that's $2.7 billion in taxable revenue that is lost. $2.3 billion of that lost revenue is illegally smuggled in tobacco and cigs, with the rest being the domestic growth. Obvious question: who's smuggling it in? Early on, it was allegedly controlled by the Hadara syndicate. However, in October 2024, the alleged ringleader, Nazir Hadara, was arrested. It may be years before a trial occurs, with Nazir currently under strict bail conditions. The main player now is allegedly a man named Kazim Hamad, a convicted drug trafficker who, after spending a decade in Australian prisons, was extradited back to Iraq in 2023, where he is now virtually untouchable by police. There was a previous rival of his, also allegedly in the illegal tobacco game, a man named Sam Abdul Rahim, also known as the Punisher, but he was executed in a gangland killing in January 2025, shot dead in a car park in front of his girlfriend. Mind you, this was after many more prior attempts on his life. And it makes sense these men would take advantage of the tobacco excise when there is so much money to be made, and compared to other forms of smuggling, it's an infinitely lighter sentence. If gangs attempt to smuggle heroin into a country, for instance, and they're caught with anything more than 2 kilograms, they're getting a max fine of $555,000 or 20 years in prison. If they attempt to smuggle in more than 5 kilograms of tobacco, or you're caught selling, buying, or manufacturing tobacco, they get a fine of up to $495,000 or only 10 years in jail. Tobacco is easier to sell, and you don't need to worry nearly as much about police presence. This tobacco excise was a golden opportunity to make billions, and that's exactly what happened. But when billions of dollars are involved, and criminal gangs are involved, of course violence is going to follow. In Victoria, over the past 18 months, 105 tobacco stores have been burnt to the ground. Recently, South Australia has been caught in the mix with 17 firebombings. Tobacconists are extorted to either hand over their shop, sell the illegal tobacco, or potentially be killed. 2 execution-style shootings have already occurred in Victoria, with the victim suspected to be involved in the tobacco trade. An innocent woman was also murdered in her home when it was set on fire because arsonists got the wrong house. And I haven't even talked about vapes yet. Not that that really changes anything. The government's new policy to make pharmacies the gatekeepers of these non-flavored vapes isn't going to solve anything. It just means these vapes are going to be pulled into the already existing underground black market, or people are just going to start buying the underground ciggies instead. And let's not ignore the fact that the Therapeutic Goods Association estimate that 97% of users are buying their vapes from the underground black market. And don't get me wrong, I understand the point of the vape ban was to stop young people getting addicted to these substances. It is much more difficult for a young person to get addicted to a cigarette than it is for their mango mantra flavored vape. But at the end of the day, all this is going to do is provide more revenue to the underground black market, and that revenue is used to fuel more illicit, illegal activity. This money isn't going to the mom and pop tobacconists who are just looking to make a bit extra under the counter. It's being used to fund organized crime. There's 3 real options the government now has to fix this issue, if they can even fix it. The first option is you have to dramatically lower the excise. The second option is you have to crack down aggressively on the smuggling and illegal sale of tobacco. And the third option is you do a combination of both. But the reality is, every single one of these options comes with potentially horrible consequences. If we lower the tax and make cigarettes more competitive in the market, more people will probably start smoking. The argument is that with the increased tax revenue, you can fund social programs that combat or manage addiction. Maybe you can put more money into research for smoking-related illnesses, or you can make the community safer and better. But at the end of the day, unless so much of the tax is removed that these legal cigarettes are competitive to $15 a pack, you're probably not going to be winning this fight. Option 2, we pump more funding into services like the Australian Border Force's Illicit Tobacco Task Force. In 2014, border agents stopped more than 45 million illicit cigarettes and nearly 6.5 tons of tobacco getting into the country in 5 days. This works out to be roughly 75 million in potentially evaded tax revenue. The thing is though, a lot of the tobacco busts sound good, but they really are just a drop in the bucket. Look, bang for your buck, putting money into these task forces does collect you a significant amount of taxable revenue. But there's also the risk that the more we tighten how much is getting into the country, creates a more competitive market amongst the gangs. There's more competition and then more violence. Option 3, which is the best option in my opinion, is you have to do the combination of both. You have to slowly decrease the tax excise, meaning cigarettes are more affordable for the average person, use the tax revenue to fund the Australian Border Force, and crack down more on the gangs. You fund more into the police, and you try and get a hold of this aggressive and violent underground black market. But at this point, the question is that even possible to do? Is there just going to be more violence? If we decrease the tax excise, are we going to see the number of smokers increase, and it's going to cost the Australian healthcare system more than the revenue it is providing? We are in this mess because the government ignored advice and tried to squeeze tobacco for all it is worth. And now we are left with a problem that no one knows how to fix. But something needs to be fixed because people are dying, buildings are being set on fire, and we have no idea what to do. But hey, come join the Discord, come talk about it, come say hi, leave a comment, like and subscribe. It's been real.